In the shadowed chronicles of Middle-earth, few names stir as much terror as the Witch King of Angmar, the dread lord of the Nazgul and Sauron's most feared servant. Cloaked in deathless shadow, his very presence brings despair, yet his story is not one born of pure evil. It is the haunting tale of a king, once proud and mighty, who, driven by ambition and blinded by desire, forfeited his soul to the will of the Dark Lord. Once a ruler among men, he sought power beyond mortal limits, only to be consumed by a darkness from which there was no return. The Witch King's tragic path is one of slow corruption, as the rings of power twisted his soul and ensnared his will. His descent into shadow and eventual rise as the leader of the Nazgul embody the dangers of unchecked ambition and the insidious nature of Sauron's influence. What was once a man of great promise became a wraith, lost to the twilight, a living embodiment of fear and ruin. His story is not just that of a villain, but of a fallen king, a grim warning of the price of power in the world of Middle-earth. The Witch King's fall begins, as does that of all the Nazgul, with the gifting of the 9 rings of power. These rings, forged by Celebrimbor under the deceitful guidance of Sauron, were given to the lords of men, mighty kings and warriors whose ambition knew no bounds. In the Silmarillion, it is written, 9 for mortal men doomed to die. These words foreshadow the tragic fate of those who would accept the rings. Though they were given as gifts, the 9 were imbued with Sauron's malevolence, designed to ensnare and dominate their bearers. The man who would become the Witch King was one such ruler, a proud and ambitious king whose desire for power led him to accept the ring with little hesitation. The rings granted their wearers great power, extending their lifespans and amplifying their strength and influence. But this gift was a double-edged sword. With every day they wore their rings, the kings of men found themselves more and more bound to the will of Sauron. Their lives stretched unnaturally long, but their souls slowly withered away, consumed by the shadow of the Dark Lord. Those who used the 9 rings became mighty in their day, kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. They obtained glory and great wealth, yet it turned to their undoing. They had, as it seemed, unending life, yet life became unendurable to them. This passage illuminates the tragic irony of the rings. What the bearers thought was a blessing became a curse. The desire for eternal power led them not to triumph, but to ruin. For the future Witch King, the transformation from man to wraith was slow but inevitable. As the years passed, the mortal men who bore the 9 rings became ensnared more tightly in Sauron's grip. Their bodies faded, becoming invisible to the world of the living, but more importantly, their souls began to diminish. The Witch King, once a powerful and proud king, gradually lost everything that made him human. His identity, his will, his very soul, all were consumed by the power of the One Ring, which Sauron had forged to control the other rings of power. They had, as it seemed, unending life, yet life became unendurable to them, and one by one, sooner or later, according to their native strength and to the good or evil of their wills in the beginning, they fell under the thraldom of the ring that they bore and under the domination of the One, which was Sauron's. The transformation into a Ringwraith is not an immediate one. It is a gradual descent into madness and oblivion. The Witch King did not know when he first donned the ring that it would eventually strip him of his very self. As a wraith, he became invisible to the mortal world, a being trapped between life and death, bound to the will of Sauron for eternity. Gandalf explains this fate to Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring. They became permanently invisible, and they entered into the realm of shadows. The Nazgul were they, the Ringwraiths, the most terrible servants of the Dark Lord, that had been kings. In this transformation, the man who would become the Witch King ceased to exist as an individual with his own thoughts and desires. He became a shadow, a mere extension of Sauron's will. His ambitions, once grand and kingly, were now twisted into the service of a greater evil. Among the nine, it was the Witch King who ascended beyond mere mortal corruption, driven by a deep hunger for power that set him apart from the others. Sauron recognized this ambition and cruelty, marking him as the most fearsome of the Ringwraiths, destined to command the Nine. His mastery of dark sorcery, learned from forgotten spirits or even older powers, was unparalleled. Some speculated that his sorcery might have rivaled Sauron's own had he ever dared turn it against his master. Yet, bound by the One Ring, his every conquest only tightened the chains of his servitude. The Witch King's power was truly realized in the frozen north, where he founded the dark realm of Angmar, a kingdom of malice and shadow. From his citadel, he commanded legions of orcs, trolls, and darker creatures, all bent to his sinister will. Angmar itself became a reflection of his sorcery, a land where winter never ended and despair reigned eternal. His gaze turned toward Arnor, the fractured kingdom of the Dunedain. With cold precision, he dismantled it piece by piece, exploiting every weakness and internal division until Arnor lay in ruins, its line of kings broken. In the return of the king, it is said, "In the days of Urnur, the last king of Gondor, there came a great captain of evil, who, growing in might and malice, sought to bring the North Kingdom to its knees. This captain was none other than the Witch King, the Lord of Angmar. It was not merely conquest, but a calculated curse. His dark sorcery ensured that the North would never rise again, casting a shadow over the land that lingered long after Arnor's fall. Through his devastating campaigns, the Witch King solidified his reputation as Sauron's most dangerous servant. Yet his victories brought him no freedom. For every realm he toppled, his power grew. Yet so too did his servitude, forever bound to the will of his dark master. Though the Witch King was the most powerful of the Nazgul, his strength was not his own. He was bound to the will of Sauron, and his power derived entirely from the Dark Lord. This dependence on Sauron is one of the great tragedies of the Witch King's existence. Though he once sought power for himself, he became a slave to the very force he had hoped to master. As a wraith, the Witch King was driven by fear, both his own and the fear he inspired in others. The power of the Ringwraiths lay not in their physical strength, but in their ability to inspire terror in the hearts of their enemies. This was particularly true of the Witch King, whose mere presence was enough to drive men to despair. Few could withstand the dreadful presence of the Ringwraiths. Even the bravest of the soldiers of Gondor and Rohan found their hearts failing them when the Black Captain drew near. Yet, for all his power, the Witch King was still a servant, a puppet of Sauron's will. His victories, his conquests, and his very existence were all in service of a master who cared nothing for him as an individual. He was a tool, and his fate was inseparably bound to Sauron's. One of the most famous aspects of the Witch King's story is the prophecy that foretold his downfall. In the return of the king, it is said that the Witch King could not be killed by any man. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall. This prophecy would later come to pass in a dramatic fashion during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. The Witch King, at the height of his power, led Sauron's forces against the city of Minas Tirith. His presence on the battlefield was enough to strike fear into the hearts of Gondor's defenders, and he believed himself invincible, trusting in the prophecy that no man could defeat him. However, the Witch King's arrogance proved to be his undoing. In the heat of battle, he faced Éowyn, the shield maiden of Rohan, who had disguised herself as a man to fight alongside her kin. As she stood against the Witch King, he mocked her, confident that no man could harm him. But Éowyn revealed her true identity. "But no living man am I. You look upon a woman." With the help of Merry, who struck a blow that weakened the Witch King, Éowyn was able to deliver the final blow, fulfilling the prophecy and ending the reign of terror that had plagued Middle-earth for centuries. The defeat of the Witch King at the hands of Éowyn and Merry was no ordinary end, but the culmination of a fate woven in shadows long before that fateful moment on the battlefield. Once a proud and formidable man, the Witch King had become something far darker, a spectre bound in eternal servitude to Sauron. His transformation, whispered about in the dark corners of Middle-earth, was said to have stripped him of more than just flesh and blood. It had severed him from his very soul. No longer a man, but a vessel for an ancient malevolence, his arrogance grew unchecked, for the ring had deceived him into believing he was beyond death, beyond prophecy. The whispers of his invincibility echoed through the lands, sowing fear and despair wherever he went. Yet, it was this very belief that would seal his doom. For it was not raw strength or great power that brought about his end, but a truth more profound and mysterious. The Witch King had long since ceased to be a man. The ancient prophecies, half forgotten in the minds of men, had foretold his doom, though not in the way he or Sauron had interpreted them. "No man can kill me," he had declared, his voice filled with the certainty of one who believed himself immune to fate's designs. But the prophecy spoke not of men, but of something deeper, of the loss of his humanity. And so, in a bitter twist, it was Éowyn, a shield maiden of Rohan, and Merry, a humble hobbit, who unwound the dark threads of his existence. Their defiance pierced not just his body, but the very fabric of the dark sorcery that bound him. His fall was more than the death of a wraith. It was the unraveling of a tragedy that spanned ages. The Witch King's downfall symbolized the deeper sorrow of the Nazgul, once kings of great renown, now mere husks of their former selves, enslaved by their lust for power. These once mighty rulers, who had sought greatness and immortality, had instead become shadows, forever tethered to the will of Sauron. The Witch King, their most feared leader, had risen to unimaginable heights, yet in doing so had lost everything that once defined him as a man. His defeat did not just mark the end of his reign of terror, but the shattering of an ancient illusion, the lie that power alone could grant him the immortality he so desperately craved. As his form crumbled into the void, so too did the terrible reign of the Nazgul, their dark journey finally meeting its end. But even in death, the legacy of the Witch King lingered, a cautionary tale for all who sought dominion through darkness. His defeat was not just the end of an era, but a haunting reminder that the pursuit of power, unchecked by wisdom or compassion, leads only to ruin. And so, the Witch King's fall became the final chapter in a tragic saga that had begun not with his rise, but with his forsaking of his very humanity. In seeking to dominate others, the Witch King lost himself entirely, becoming nothing more than a tool for a greater evil. His story is a reminder that true power does not lie in domination or control, but in understanding one's limits and remaining true to oneself. The Witch King's story is a tragedy of a man who sought greatness, but found only ruin. His transformation from a mighty king of men into the leader of the Nazgul is a testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition and the seductive lure of power. Once he was a man of great promise, but in accepting the ring, he lost everything that made him human. He became a wraith, bound to Sauron's will, and though he gained great power, it was not his own. In the end, his fall was not merely the result of Éowyn's blade, but of the choices he made long ago, choices that led him to lose his soul to Sauron. The Witch King serves as a symbol of the corrupting influence of the rings of power and the ultimate price of ambition. His story is a cautionary tale for all who seek power at the expense of their own soul, and it remains one of the most tragic arcs in the legendarium of Middle-earth.